Welcome to this week's episode of The Sacred Path. I am your guide, Rothi Midran Afkalu. Last week, if you were listening, we discussed the deception of the spiritual world. This week, we'll be going a little deeper down the rabbit hole, discussing the deception and misleading information of the English language. Few native speakers truly think about or realize how deceptive the language truly is. One contributing factor to its confusion is the fact that there are many other languages and cultures that are a part of it and helped to create it because of the global melting pot that is our world of America. Much of that confusion goes even deeper than cultural influence. We'll be discussing it in depth in today's episode. Remember, words cast spells. Why do you think they call it spelling? And how does one cast a spell? Why, in cursive, of course. You see, in ancient magic, a word spell is a sigil. One creates a sigil by taking the letters of a word or words. In ancient languages, the vowels were left out of the printed languages. In casting a sigil, this practice is maintained, and then the letters that remain are connected, much the same as they are in cursive. Another issue for our language is the month of the year. We spoke on the days of the week in the last episode. Few think about the fact that September starts with the prefix for 7. But it is in fact the 9th month. October begins with the prefix for 8. But it is in fact the 10th month. November begins with 9. And it is the 11th month. And December begins with des, or 10, and is the 12th month. The reason for this, originally, before the Romans decided to interfere and mess everything up. Our year began in March in alignment with the zodiac calendar, which begins on April 22nd for Aries. Originally, this was the case. But this fell on the holy days for the Catholic Church, so they celebrated it on April 1st. As the first day of the year. In truth, this change is the origin of our April Fool's Day, which just so happens to fall on today's date. The new calendar, those who followed the new calendar referred to the old followers who celebrated on April 1st instead of January 1st as April Fools, because they were following the old ways. There are many levels of deception in our language. One of my favorites is the use of the word mourning, which refers to a period of sadness or depression. It also refers to the time of the day before noon. It's no surprise that most people are depressed and unhappy when the day begins. After all, everyone tells them they should be in a period of mourning. I myself love the start of the day. The sun rising on the horizon, the brisk morning air making me feel alive. But then again, I always say good day, never good morning. There's no such thing as a good period of sorrow. Perhaps the grand master of all programming and deception, the media, which if you break it down, me, translating to I am, Dia, referring to God or a deity. What are most of us supposed to worship? What are most of us controlled by? Why, of course, the media, the I am God, which is a big business, very lucrative and very good money for a few people. Which brings us to our next subject, the money system, also known as currency. Its name coming from the current, as in electricity, or more accurately, the flow of water, because money, like water, is most useful when it is flowing. If it is still for too long, such as in a bank, or which is also what stops the current flowing, being the edge of a river, it becomes stagnant and eventually useless. It's starting to sound like a conspiracy, but that's another word with a negative meaning. But in truth, conspiracy means to act in harmony with spirit. It's not a bad thing at all. It's actually closer to a government plan. Govern meaning to control, and ment referring to the mind. The government, literally translated, means the organization of mind control. Perhaps we are entering the age of the apocalypse, but it is not the end of times as we are taught by many, such as religions, although it may be the end for them, which you will find out why shortly. But rather the word means the lifting of the veil. In other words, the end of lies and illusions. This actually could be the end for many religious institutions, governmental institutions, and the controllers of our world, because of the deception and lies that they exist on. But that's not for me to decide. I would be hard-pressed to say which is more corrupt and controlling between religion and government. In my opinion, there's little difference between the two. While we are on the subject of religion, allow me to clear the air about Christianity. Jesus is not a proper name. It's actually a title, meaning Savior, just the same as Christ is a title, meaning the Anointed One. They never actually gave a name for him. Which brings up the antithesis to Jesus, or so they say, Lucifer, a name which actually means light bringer. It makes one think, why is someone who is depicted as evil and given the name Lightbringer as their title? All I know, not all is as it seems. The level of deception has been going on for thousands of years. The word God is in fact created by the Catholic Church. It did not exist in the same form before they adopted it into their writings. It is actually an adaptation of the Hebrew word goa, which means spirit. It also means to pour libations. In essence, a bartender. So literally, God could be translated as a spirit or a bartender. Gives a new twist to the Jesus turning water into wine, doesn't it? The original word used in Greek, which slips my mind at this moment, translates to mean energy. So literally, God is the energy of creation, which I feel is much more accurate and proper. By now, I hope you are starting to understand, or should I say, stand under, which means to submit to authority, because that's literally what understanding means, how deep the deception and programming is in our language. It's all part of the politics. Poly, many, ticks, blood-sucking creatures. They finally got one of them right. Now I hope you're starting to understand, or should I say comprehend, the level of deception by the programmers in the matrix we live. But there is a way to escape it, though. It requires persistence, diligence, and hard work. It takes much effort to escape the veil of illusions, because the deception has been a part of our society for 2,000 years plus. But it is possible, because I have basically done so myself, now living in the beautiful and sacred raw lands that I call home, neighboring majestic Mount Blanca in Alamosa, Colorado, the tallest of the peaks in the Rocky Mountains at 14,000 plus feet. The fates have shown me an alternative vision of this land, and I've begun to work with the lands to bring it into reality. It's a project that integrates all of my knowledge and passion, my connection with nature and the universe, the tranquility and spirituality and practice and preach of, my love of nature, exotic foods, and abilities as a chef and indeed alchemist, because cooking is nothing more than alchemy, transforming the base ingredients into gold. Much the same as meditation does for man itself. Our immediate goals focus on integrating practices of permaculture to transform the desert into an oasis, not only for the senses, but for the body and spirit as well. With not only food, gardens, and underground greenhouses so we can have fresh produce all year round, ultimately adding our own farm animals, chickens, ducks, and more so we can actually have everything completely sustained from the lands that we exist. Earthen kitchens. Zen garden is in the plans that will actually include a pond around the garden with islands dedicated to each element of creation and the bridges adjoining them, as well as spiritual centers, sweat lodges, and more as the lands speak to me shall be developed. The majority of the initial investment is time, effort, and hard work, but the plants required to transform 40 acres of desert into an oasis, specially focusing on exotic and rare vegetables and plants, will not be cheap. But it will be worth much more than the price which is invested to create it. This is where you come in, my friends, my listeners, my fans, my colleagues. We need donations of seeds, donations of materials, and more importantly, monetary donations and labor so that we can assist and begin the process to purchase the seeds which we have already been guided to and shown. If you seek further information or are interested in making a contribution or a donation, please contact me at sacritinerus@gmail.com. That is sacritineris@gmail.com. Thank you for all for being part of this, creating a new earth in harmony with all creation. We will be utilizing both nature and technology, integrating solar energy, integrating wind power, integrating windmills and wind turbines that are actually made in a sculptural form, directing the water that flows through this land